Yeah, so you can experience these things, and the things that you experience, we can think of the river, by the way, we can think of the river quite literally. In other words, when you walk into a river, did anybody ever go camping? Or you've been camping? Did you ever go back to the same spot over the course of many years? Yeah. It's an interesting question to ask yourself if the spot is changing. It always looks maybe a little bit different. Is the spot changing, or are you changing? Are you becoming more observant of what's going on there? In other words, you might get there one day and be like, wow, it feels like there's fewer trees than there used to be. But that's because when you were small, the trees looked much, much bigger. Have you ever noticed how big your bed used to be? And then today it's so much smaller than it used to be? That's because you have grown. Literally, physically, you've grown bigger. But when you go to this spot in the river that you're encountering, maybe you encountered it when you were 10 years old. And so you step into it, and the river feels so big. You know, it's like it's almost up to your waist, you might feel like. It feels like any second you could be knocked down, and that's part of the excitement of the whole thing. That you feel like, or if you go to the ocean. It's one of the great things about going to the, taking a little kid to places. Because when you take a little kid somewhere, let's say you take a 3-year-old or 4-year-old, whatever this is, to the beach, and then they walk out in the ocean, and they kind of walk out there hesitantly, and they turn to make sure there's someone nearby, or they're just that courageous kid who goes running out there. Now, when's the last time they were at the beach? 6 months ago, or a year ago maybe, when it was warm again? Think about that. That's a third or a quarter of their life. That would be like you haven't been to the ocean in 6 years, 5 years. So they go running out there. So for them, this is super exciting because they haven't been out there forever. Or maybe it's the first time they've ever been there. That's one of the great things about hanging out with little kids, because so many things are brand new to them. It's the first time they've ever experienced it, and they get so excited about it. That's why it's wonderful, because it can help to remind you what it was like to have that kind of excitement, to experience the world for the first time. Now, as we get older, we get a bit jaded, and we begin to feel like, well, I've already experienced the world. You go out to the ocean, it's like, it's cool, I like it. It's my spot, and we completely miss all of the new things that are around there. We forget to experience it, to kind of settle into the moment and enjoy it like it's the first time that we've ever experienced this. It's kind of like I feel horrible for really old people who kind of walk around and they think that they have seen it all. It's like, I've seen it all, and they act like when they go into a situation, I don't know if any of you know a person who's like that. They get that look on their face where they're kind of like, it's like a smirk, to let you know that they know that I already know what you're talking about. No, you don't. You haven't heard me. I already know. I've been there. No, you haven't been where I am right now. Because where I am is a completely different river from where you were. And the things that I'm feeling for the first time here, you have completely probably forgotten what they were like. It's like you're talking about a breakup. People will be like, oh, don't worry, you'll get over it. I hope not. I hope not, because I hope that you learn the lessons from what that was like, so that you can remember what it felt like when someone did wrong to you, so that later on, before you venture out to do wrong to somebody else, you remind yourself what it felt like, and to not want somebody else to feel those things that you're feeling right now. People who say things like that, again, they've completely forgotten those things, which means that they have forgotten the lessons from those things. They're jaded. For them now, that's just life. The ocean, it's just life. Yeah, it is life. But nothing is just anything. Everything is so much more than just. The ocean is life, but the ocean has life. The ocean is life. The ocean gives birth to life. There's so many things going on. You ever thought about, I think we did talk about this a few weeks ago. You ever go out to the ocean and you imagine if you get goggles, I guess you could do it, right? You just dug underneath the water. You think about everything that you could possibly see down there. If you had vision, if the salt wasn't blocking your vision, how much stuff is down there? And I don't just mean like seaweed and syringes, and stuff like that. I'm talking about how much life is down there. You ever think about how many ships are at the bottom of the ocean? Yes. And all of the life and thing that's teeming around there. I hate that word teeming. I just used it. All the life that's swirling around within the hulls of those once great ships, things that used to carry people and commerce, and for them this was life, and then this is where they met the end of it. And yet, for us, it's just kind of, it's just the ocean. But nothing is just anything. And the more that you can kind of get rid of that word just from your vocabulary, and experience things for what they really are at that moment, the more likely you are to be able to fill your life with excitement. Or, as it said, this is what success in life is, right? To burn always with a hard gem-like flame, to maintain a high level of excitement and ecstasy. That's what success in life is. And it becomes impossible to do that if you view the world in a stereotyped way. I'll say that again. It becomes impossible to fill your life with excitement and ecstasy when you view the world in a stereotyped way. Oh, you were in love? I've been there. No, you haven't. You've been through it in your own way, but you haven't stepped in the river that person has stepped into who's talking to you. The first time you've ever been on a roller coaster, I've done thousands of roller coasters, but you haven't been on that one time that one kid is experiencing. And sometimes you can gain some kind of like level of vicarious energy through people who are experiencing a thing for the first time. And there's an excitement that you can kind of derive from that, you know? And yet, a lot of times we'll be jaded about it. We'll kind of be like, man, calm down, it's just a roller coaster. That's the problem with your life. You see it as every day and every experience and every moment as just something, rather than what it really is, which is an experience. Because an experience is exactly that river that we're talking about. It's the thing that makes up your life. It's like saying that when you have a suitcase, and you're trying to pack your suitcase, and it won't close. So you take out one shirt, and you're like, it's just one shirt. That shirt's an experience, though, if you think of your life as a suitcase. Do you want to go on a journey with, how much stuff do you want to have with you in that suitcase? Maybe only as much as necessary. Well, how much do you have to have in your suitcase of life before it becomes a meaningful life, a valuable life, a well-lived life? And every t-shirt you take out, like, you want to go to the mountains or whatever? No, I'm okay. You want to go to the beach? No, it's just the beach. And eventually you're walking around with a minimalist suitcase rattling around. Now imagine again, you take that suitcase into the afterlife, and it's full of all of your experiences. What do you want that suitcase to be like? Do you want it to be empty because you took out all of those experiences all along the way, and then you get to the afterlife and you just have nothing to wear? Or do you want it to be having to like jump on top of the bed to shove that suitcase down, stand on top of it and try to zip around it, and then kind of drag this thing into the afterlife and say, oh, I guess I'm going on my eternal journey. Let me bring these experiences with me. And then that goes back to what I was talking about just yesterday, I think it was. This idea that if you had to live your life, well, not live your life, but I guess watch your life on repeat for all of eternity. Do you really want to be wearing the same shirt every day? And be wearing the same pair of shoes every day? Because every time that you watch that, you're going to see all of the opportunities and the experiences that we let pass by. And we're going to be thinking, you're going to see yourself taking things out of your suitcase. And you're going to be saying, fool, put it back. Don't do that. Don't do that. You'll see all the mistakes that you made. And the mistakes are fine because they're necessary. I'll say it again. The mistakes are fine because they're necessary. There are things in life that we don't like, but things in life that we have to go through because they create a greater good, because they're necessary for our growth. You have to fall down and hurt yourself and scrape your knees once in a while to know that you shouldn't be doing certain things. Because if you don't, it's going to lead to a tragic end. If you're running and you trip and you fall and you bang your knee, well, now you've learned what it's like to fall from just 2 feet up. Maybe hopefully from there you learn that you shouldn't be climbing a tree that's 30 stories up and falling from there. Then you also learn that you can fall from a tree that's only 1 story high. In other words, you learn your limits within these things. And then within those limits, you can live your life. Because if you realize that outside of those limits, it's the end of life. Experience that you shouldn't have because they're damaging to you. And so, the more that you can fit in there, the more you can test those limits, the more you can test the boundaries of experience to be able to say, yes, I did that. Yes, I've experienced that. And then that will give you a perspective, probably, hopefully, if you can temper that. If you can temper that with humility. In other words, not to think, well, I've been there, so I know it all. I did that 40 years ago, so I know what you're going through. Man, now hopefully you can remember when you were the age that you are, and hearing people talk about how they've been there, and you can sit there and really genuinely know, no, you haven't. Maybe you've experienced love before, but you didn't experience it the way that I am, because you didn't experience the love that I experienced. You didn't experience it through the personality that I am. Maybe you've experienced loss before, but you didn't experience the loss of this one person that I experienced through the lens of my perception. Because, again, none of us sees the world the way that it really is. We see the world the way that we are. And you've got this thick layer of personality that's around you, that all of life's experiences have to kind of permeate this thing before it ever reaches your consciousness, which means that you see it differently from everybody else. You experience it differently from everybody else. You feel it. You hear it. You can even touch it differently from everybody else. And so we can have similar experiences, and that's neat, because that means that we're somehow brought together in this way, so we can kind of relate to each other. If you've ever lost your parents, I can relate to you in a way. I've lost both of my parents. Terribly irresponsible, I know. You lose one parent, that's just misfortune. You lose two parents, that's just irresponsibility. No more parents for you, you keep losing them. But if you've lost your parents before, I can relate to you in a certain way. If you can't joke about it the way that I can, though, then I experience it differently from you. But that doesn't mean that we can't connect in this way. This is one of the values to having as many experiences as possible, because it gives us the opportunity and the ability to connect to human beings around us. To be aware, yes, I perceive it differently, I can feel it differently, but that doesn't mean that we can't come together in deep and intimate and meaningful ways. I mean, think about people who you might be predisposed to hating or disliking, whatever. I imagine that if you actually met people like that, you would have a harder time not liking them. We kind of intuitively understand this, because the more that you talk to people, you realize that people are just people. You don't want to encounter people like that. You don't want to encounter people who you are kind of inclined to not like online, because you're going to see a terrible version of them. You want to run into them at a Starbucks somewhere, or, I don't know, in a classroom, sitting next to them. Because that gives you an opportunity to expand out your experiences and say, maybe it isn't that maybe it's not that I don't like, this kind of a person. Maybe it's that I don't like the stereotype of what these people represent. Because, again, failure in life is going to be to live your life through stereotypes. To fail to see the small, nuanced, but significant differences in every situation. No two flowers are the same. We know that. Now, do you want to take time studying every single flower to see every single difference? Maybe not. Fine. But understand that that means that everything is like this. No two flowers are the same. No two cheeseburgers are the same. No two experiences are the same. Because you're different. You're different. Every time you see a painting, every time you walk in, every time you see that painting over there, yeah, it's the same exact painting, but you're different, and you're half of the equation. You're half of the equation, at least, in every experience that you have, in terms of being able to communicate with people. It isn't just what you say, it's what's being heard. What movie is it? Oh, I just saw something on Netflix. I'm trying to remember what it's called. But there's a great line from it where there's a girl and her boyfriend, and she tells him to do something, and so he does it, and she says something to the effect of, "You're not supposed to do that." And he's like, "I don't understand. You just told me to do it." And she said, "Don't listen to what I say. Listen to what I want." And he's like, And if you understand that, then you understand that. And if not, you're probably a dude. I'm just saying, man. I'm just saying. Because I mentioned that to several of my friends, and all the girls were like, "Yeah, of course." And the guys were like, "Man," and they were like almost like angered by this. Like, "Man, that's the problem." And I go, "Well, dude, what's the alternative?" Yeah. So don't listen to what someone says. Listen to what they want. What might someone say that's opposite of what they actually want?
Like when we say, like, "Oh, it's fine. I don't feel
Yeah.
But like you can tell by your tone in the morning that we are hungry.
Oh yeah. Fine. Period. All right. Yeah, she says it's fine. Yeah, I'm not. No, are you hungry? Oh, I'm sorry. Not even are you hungry? Because you might not be hungry. Do you want food?
I understand.
Yeah. No, I don't want. No, I don't want food. And let's go. Let's go get food. Because you have to hear what a person wants, not just what they say. Because sometimes, especially in close relationships, whether it's romantic or even just good friends, but especially in romantic relationships, when we're trying to put somebody else ahead of ourselves. You know, you want me to bring you some food? No, it's okay. Because what you're thinking is, I want some wings, but I don't want to put you out of your way because you're thinking about that other person. And then now imagine if you can, maybe you've experienced this before. Some would say if you've experienced this, maybe it is true love. You tell the person, no, I don't want anything. And then they show up at your house and they bring food anyway. And they go, you heard what I meant, not what I said. Or whatever it is, it doesn't have to be food, whatever it is. There are all kinds of things like this in life that, and again, it isn't even just that we're lying, it's that we're thinking to ourselves, do I want food? I want food because I want to eat it, but I don't want to put you out of your way. And on the scales of me wanting to eat and not wanting to put you out of your way, not wanting to put you out of your way is heavier. Because I care more about you. And then that other person's like, yeah, but I care about you. And hopefully those are the kinds of arguments that you have. Yeah.
Yeah, like sometimes my friends will go to like the store or something to like 7-Eleven and they ask me if I want anything. And like sometimes I do, but I don't want them to like have to pay for it. So then I'm just like, oh no, like I'm fine, like I don't want it. But just because like I don't want them to pay.
Oh yeah.
I'm the one
What she
that
wants?
asks if you want anything.
What she wants?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And so maybe you have stepped into that river of experience such that you now understand that when someone says, no, I don't want this thing, but you understand that what they're saying is maybe they don't want you to spend money on them, or they don't want to put you out of your way. So you're experienced enough now to know, like, yeah, I'll go out of my way for you, because I know what you're really saying. Now, has anybody ever brought you like a video taco and you said no, and then you're like, I'm not going to eat it, I said I don't want it. Does that ever happen?
That's only if I'm being petty,
Yeah.
Right? If I'm mad.
Exactly. Exactly, because you're working on something else because you're being petty. No, I'm not going to eat it. Give it to the dog.
If I'm
I
mad.
don't give it to the dog, you know.
Yeah, then the person's like, okay, and they give it to the dog. Why would you do that? You have to hear what I want, not what I say. But that's the thing, is that comes from experience. And by the way, that comes from experience with people, because again, some of you in here might be going, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. It's kind of, why wouldn't you just say what you want? Yes, some people communicate this way. And by the way, a lot of people say they communicate this way, but they really don't. It's like people who say they want truth and honesty. People want truth and honesty the same way they want ice cream. Little bowls. Not when someone's shoving it to you by the gallon full. And so we want truth and honesty. We want to be able to communicate directly. But again, in a case like that, it isn't a terrible thing. It's like you're lying to the person. It isn't that you're just self-deprecating. It's that you care about that other person. You're probably very empathetic towards people generally, and you don't want people to go out of their way for you. Now, there are some people who will, when you say, all right, I'll be right back, I'm going to 7-Eleven. Hey, you going to 7-Eleven? Yeah. Hey, could you get me? Without you even offering. And then some of you maybe even know that you can't even say it. You'll say, I'm going to go to the bathroom. But you're really going to 7-Eleven? Because you know that if you tell them you're going to 7-Eleven, they're going to ask you to get them something. Yeah.
But what if it's like, so you're saying that if they don't go out of their way, they don't care?
No. No, they could be petty.
You just started something.
No, they could be petty. Good, let's put the focus on you for a second. Tell me about this. What you're talking about. What are you really talking about? I'm trying to hear what you're really saying.
Wow, he cares. He cares. He listens. No, but I'm saying like, it's because you're saying.
Right? I'm a good listener, right?
Yeah, you are.
Goddamn right. Go ahead.
So you're basically saying that they'll go out their way just to get what you want, but it's like they don't go out their way to get what you want, but you'll go out your way to get what they want. What does that say?
It could mean a few things. First off, it could mean that the person is just immature.
Well, what if they say you're the immature?
That sounds like something an immature person would say. I'm not crying, you're crying. I'm not ugly, you're ugly. I'm not short, you're short. I'm not angry, why are you so angry? Calm down. It's a way of trying to turn it back on the other person. It's an immature thing. Don't little kids do that all the time?
Yes. I don't mind little kids, I don't know.
I hear you. Unfortunately, I coach them a few days a week. And then that doesn't mean you can never get punched in the face and have it not hurt. Just like it doesn't mean that you can never go through a breakup, however many you have, and not walk out unhurt. But what it does mean is that you have hopefully developed a skill set by that time to be able to cope with those things. It's one of the reasons that childhood trauma is so damaging. Because when you're a little kid and you're traumatized for the first time, you don't have the coping mechanisms for how to deal with it. So the only thing you really can do is try to suppress it. And if you're a particularly proactive kid and you see your parents fighting, you might be thinking like, oh, this is my fault. I have to therefore do something about this. And of course, what can you do when you're 6 years old and your parents are fighting? Nothing. It's not your fault. It's got nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with them. And yet you'll try very hard to do that. And maybe that's the thing that sets you off on a lifelong adventure of, in every relationship, assuming everything is your fault and that therefore it's your job to fix everything. Even when it's the other person who's pointing, and maybe then you fast forward, 12 more years, and maybe you're that person who's telling somebody, you're the immature one, not me. I'm not doing that, you're doing that. Now, that might be because the person doesn't have a lot of maturity, doesn't have a lot of self-reflection, because self-reflection takes a lot of time. It takes a lot for that person to do. If you have self-reflected, and that person has not, well then yeah, it's very easy to be able to look at everything as somebody else's fault. It's hard to look at things and have things and say things are your own fault. I had to do that last night, man. Sometimes you make that joke at someone else's expense and you forget that it can cause months of people being bothered by that. It makes the world a worse place. So hopefully that can make it a little bit better, at least in that sense, because it was a different response from what she probably normally gets from people. But in any event, so those experiences that you have, hopefully you're not the same person. Maybe the first time you experienced something, you didn't get the lesson from it because you weren't ready. Hopefully the second time you experience it, you're ready for the lesson. This is why we sometimes have to stand in the river and experience something more than once. We have to experience, almost name any experience you want. We experience heartbreak, experience loss, experience our own screw-ups. Because sometimes you screw up in ways that, you might ask yourself, God, how did I screw this up again in this, in the same way, And then you try to explain to a person, I screwed this up, but you know what? I'm going to work to not do it again. When it's like the third or fourth time you screwed up in the exact same way. It's difficult, But whether or not you should put up with that, it's entirely on you. Are you understanding that? You see it in yourself? I guess I'll leave it with this. I remember I used to coach the baseball team here, and there was a guy here named Andy Sanchez. And Andy Sanchez used to run the Learning Center. He was the head coach. When you guys come in, you ask me, how's it going? I say, every day's Christmas. It comes from Andy Sanchez. Andy died several years ago. I think I told you that story. He committed suicide on the last day of the school year. So in baseball, there's this thing that when you're in the outfield and the pitch goes in, as soon as you hear the ball hit the bat, when you're in the outfield, the first step is always back. Because if you start by walking forward and the ball is over your head, it's very difficult to now turn around and go get it. Plus, if the ball is over your head, now that person's going to get extra bases. So it's far, far, far better for the ball to land in front of you by a step than land behind you by a step. So the ball's hit, first step is always back. I was working with the baseball team, and for whatever reason, they never learned this. And I was stressing to them, first step, always back, first step, always back. Practiced it. We're in a game, and the ball's hit, and they would take their first couple of steps forward. So this one game, I just lost my shit. And I walked out, actually walked out of the dugout onto the infield and was just unloading on the outfielders. First step, always back. Just unloading on them. And Andy is just sitting there. He used to sit on a bucket. You take a bucket, turn it upside down. He would just sit on the bucket. And I go back, I sit down. I'm like, God, Coach, I'm freaking tired of having to repeat this. Blah, blah. It's going off. And he's just sitting there, just spits a little bit, looking out the field, and he doesn't even look at me. I'm sitting next to him, over here, and we're not even looking at each other. He goes, "Anybody ever give you a second chance, coach?" And I said, "Yeah, I've gotten a second chance before." All of a sudden, big scale got about this big. And he's like, "Anybody ever given you a ever given you a third chance before?" Yeah, coach, I've gotten third chances before. Anybody ever given you a fifth chance before? And all of a sudden, I just kind of shrink down, boom. And he just says, "Everybody learns at different paces. How many chances do you think we should give people?" And I just thought, I go, "Probably as many as they need to grow." And he said, "I think that's a good idea." that was the only conversation we had about it. I'm like, okay. And I was so used to dealing with coaches who they told you something one time, and if you didn't do it, then you got unloaded on after that. Some coaches, like one of my coaches in college, he yelled at you before he even taught you something. Like, you were supposed to know this coming out of the womb. How come you don't know this? Sometimes we have to stand in that river 5, 6, 10 times. Sometimes you can stand in the river just once. Uniquely, there are people, and don't miss this, who don't have to stand in the river at all. You can stand on the side of the river and see other people standing in it and go, "I don't want to make that mistake." And hopefully you can do this. Because if it's a matter of, got to make my own mistakes, boom, sometimes that water is way deeper for you than it is for someone else. Sometimes that's the water that you can't recover from. And you're going to be forever changed. Because remember, and this is important, you're not the same person as that person standing over there. The river that they're standing in might be this deep. And then when you step into it, you ever walk in the ocean before and all of a sudden it's deeper than you thought it was? They're not the same person as you. You're going to experience it differently. And so the river you step into might drown you. So when you can, learn from other people's mistakes. Learn from other people's experiences. And when necessary, but only when necessary, learn from those kinds of things yourself. It will save you a lot of headaches, believe me on that. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? All right. At some point I'll talk about Heraclitus.